Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree is here, and that means you'll be heading to the Shadow Realm for the first time, walking in the footsteps of Miquella, and taking the fight to Mesmer and his army. There is a lot to do, and when I say this DLC is big, I mean it. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and today we're sharing 10 things you should do first to get OP in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. Before we dive in, let me just be clear, the best way to play Elden Ring, and most Souls games for that matter, is whatever feels right for you. Of course, we love making guides for players that want those sorts of things, but it's a preference thing, and no one way is either right or wrong, so if you want some help, stick around, and if you want to avoid spoilers and new things all around, well, now's your chance to turn this video off. Once you teleport into the Shadow Realm for the first time, you're going to be overwhelmed by that sense of scale that FromSoft is so masterful at creating. You'll see a million cool things to look at and no idea which way to go. So for starters, let's get our bearings. The very first thing you'll want to do is find the Gravesite Plain map fragment. This can be found just east of the first Site of Grace. From here, we can get our bearings, and we're going to be heading down the road leading south, which will double back and eventually take us to the Church of Consolation. Here you'll find a few enemies, but the one I want to point out is the Black Knight. Get familiar with these guys because you'll fight a lot of them throughout your time in the DLC. However, once you kill this one, you'll be rewarded with the Black Steel Great Shield, an absolute massive defensive item you can pick up within minutes of loading into the game. Inside the church are also 2 Scadutree fragments. If these are the first 2 you're picking up, you can bring them back to a Site of Grace and level up your Scadutree Blessing for the first time, giving you a permanent buff to your offensive and defensive capabilities whilst in the Shadow Realm. If you go past the church, you'll also find a small cave with a Blessing of Marika potion that could prove useful in the coming boss fights. Next, you'll want to pick up some new weapons, and I have 3 in mind that are easy to find and require none to minimal effort. On your way back up the hill from the Church of Consolation, head into the woods here. Roaming around, you'll find Loger, a feral humanoid NPC that will attack you on sight. If you manage to defeat him, you'll be rewarded with Beast Claw, the first new weapon type you'll find in the game. We actually have a video already out on the channel sharing 6 new weapon types you can get early in the game, so go check that out. In the video, we talk about these next 2 weapons as well, which are close by and absolute freebies so long as you know where to look. The backhand blade can be found northeast of the Gravesite Plain Site of Grace at this small mausoleum. You might have to fight a patrol, but if you're fast, you can just walk up and grab the weapon. From here, head northwest to the Great Bridge North Site of Grace. Head west and you'll see a small lake. Move quickly and grab the new Great Katana weapon before the Ghost Flame Dragon wakes up. Gravesite Plain is also home to your first real challenge in the game, including an unarmored Furnace Golem. It's worth noting you can take this enemy down even without a bunch of Scadutree blessings, it just might take some time depending on how much damage you can do. Mount up and head towards the fiery monstrosity. Start wailing on his legs and eventually they'll burst, dealing critical damage. If you keep attacking, the enemy will eventually fall to the ground and you can score a critical hit on the face. Move quickly because he doesn't stay on the ground for long. Important to note, these enemies have a few different abilities, but as long as you're in melee, you really only need to watch out for the foot stomps and the jumping slam. Whenever you see one or both of the golem's legs flare up with fire, run away. You will have to time it, but if you jump over the fire shockwaves, you'll avoid all of the damage. Eventually the boss will die and you'll be rewarded with your first new crystal tier, the Deflecting Hard tier. When mixed in the Physic Flask, damage negation and guard poise will be heightened in the moment immediately after assuming a guarding stance. Successfully executing a spontaneous guard will also strengthen guard counters. There are more Furnace Golems to be found throughout the Shadow Realm, and we have a video breaking down the locations, rewards, and secrets on all of them, so check that video out once it's live on the channel. With the first Furnace Golem defeated, you're ready for a real test, and if you're like me, it's going to take a minute to get back into the swing of Elden Ring. And what better way to do that than with an actual challenging boss? Head to this location here. This is one of 4 mausoleums found throughout the Shadow Realm, and each contains a boss with a moveset based around a meta build from a previous FromSoft Souls game. In the Western Nameless Mausoleum is Black Jail Knight, who wields a greatsword and a repeating crossbow. I'm not gonna lie, this is a tough fight and you might not be up for it at this point, but you should attempt it because if you manage to defeat the boss, you'll be rewarded with the entire Solitude armor set and the Great Sword of Solitude, which could be an interesting way to change up some builds early on in the DLC. Next up, we're going to head to the Church of Benediction, and this is a ways off, so we'll need to rely on Torrent to help us out. From the mausoleum, head north until you reach the 3-path cross Site of Grace. There, you'll find a few of the first NPCs in the DLC, so be sure to chat with them. From here, head west towards the first Legacy dungeon, Bellerot Tower Settlement. Grab the Site of Grace right outside the dungeon, but hold on because we're not heading in quite yet. From this Site of Grace, turn around and head back down the hill, but stay to the right and hug the left side because you don't want to fall. Keep running until you reach the Cliff Road Terminus Site of Grace. From here, you can head left and start heading downhill. On the left is a Revered Spirit Ash, which you can use to empower your Spirit Ash summons, just like how Scadutree Fragments increased your combat stats. Continue moving through the forested area and then head to the right side of the rocks. There you'll find a path down. Move down until you see an opening on your left, avoiding or fighting the Curse Blade as you see fit. Make your way through the hole until you reach the Church of Benediction. There you'll find a few things. First is the Blessed Blue Dew Talisman, which passively restores FP when equipped. Then, on the backside of the church is the Oathseeker armor set, as well as the Pada weapon. This is solid gear, and while it's not the most powerful or potent available, it's always nice to find new options that may fit into a current or future build. For the price of exactly no combat, you get a Revered Spirit Ash, a Talisman, a weapon, and a full armor set. Next, we're going to take a bit of a detour and unlock the Cerulean Coast. You'll have to do this trek at some point, and we wanted to make sure it was clear where you needed to go. To start, you'll want to unlock the Castle Front Site of Grace. From there, head southeast, continuing to head down the entire time. Once you reach the fork in the road, turn left, continuing to head downhill. Once you reach an area filled with poison, hang a loose left and just keep heading down. Eventually, you'll reach a much darker area. Look for the giant Miranda sprout and the cave it's guarding. Make your way through and you'll eventually reach a small cave and our first checkpoint. The next section requires some careful jumping, but again, you just want to keep heading downriver. You're essentially following the river to the coastline, so be careful, avoiding enemies that might knock you off in the process, and eventually you'll reach the top of a massive waterfall. There, you'll pick up another Site of Grace. Then continue down, using the Fallen Pillar as a bridge to get from the top of the waterfall to the bottom. Follow the river and choose to either fight or run from the Furnace Golem that's guarding your path. Turn right at the Golem and crest the hill, and voila, you have reached the Cerulean Coast. This gives you access to a huge chunk of the southern part of the map, including some great boss encounters that we won't spoil in this video. It's worth the trouble. Just make sure to grab the Site of Grace so you can come back here in the future. Now, while you're here, you might want to attempt the southern Nameless Mausoleum. From the Cerulean Coast Site of Grace, head southwest. We're heading to this little island off the coast of the Shadow Realm, but it's not a straight shot. You need to locate this tree here and make your way underground to the hidden part of the world. Follow the cave and eventually you'll pop up on the island where you can find the Southern Nameless Mausoleum. Inside you'll face the Dancer of Rana, who dual wields 2 curved swords. The encounter is very fluid, with the boss constantly chaining together melee attacks, which can lock you up for a considerable amount of time. Once you defeat her, you'll be rewarded with the Dancing Blade of Rana, as well as the entire Dancer armor set. The armor isn't exactly keeping you safe, but it does enhance the power of all dancing attacks, including the one built into the weapon you just acquired. With a lot of the low-hanging fruit out of the way, it's time to take on our first Legacy dungeon, Bellerot Tower Settlement. You've most likely seen this because of all the preview footage ahead of release, but there's a lot of great loot in here, including Revered Spirit Ash, talismans, weapons, you name it. The dungeon also houses the first real boss, Divine Beast Dancing Lion, which is a fun first encounter that rewards you with a remembrance. If you're interested in a full boss guide on that fight, please leave us a comment and we'll be sure to break it down in a future video. Once you clear Bellerot Tower Settlement, my suggestion is just rip the band-aid off and go for Castle Ensis. This is another densely packed dungeon with tons of enemies and loot to pick up. It's a good challenge, but the real reason you want to do this is because it's the gateway to Scadu Altus, which is the second major zone in the game. Sure, you've unlocked Cerulean Coast, but so much happens off of Scadu Altus that you really should prioritize getting it unlocked. I don't want to mislead you though, both Bellerot Tower Settlement and Castle Ensis will take a minute, so don't think you need to do all of this in one night. I mean, unless you want to. Both dungeons will reward you handsomely, but they're no joke, and the final boss of Castle Ensis is a huge gut check. So, if you can't get it done at this specific moment, there are some other things you can explore around the area. Now, If you do manage to clear Castle Ensis, I want to leave you with one final thing to do. On the backside of the castle is the High Road Cross Site of Grace. Be sure to pick up the emote May the Best Win here, because you'll need it in a few minutes. From this point, head east to the Morth Ruins. There you'll find another Site of Grace and Dryleaf Dane. He's a man of few words, but if you use the May the Best Win emote, you'll activate a fight against the Master of Martial Arts. Defeat him in combat and you'll receive the Dryleaf Arts, as well as Dane's Hat. Dryleaf Arts gives you access to hand-to-hand combat, which is something that we were all excited about ahead of launch. Level those babies up to plus 25 and enjoy punching and kicking your way through the entire DLC. So there you have it, 10 of the best things that you can do early in Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree to give you an edge and make you OP all over again. As always, if you like our videos and you want more Elden Ring in your feed, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.